coronavirus pandemic has had an impact on expectant mothers who are awaiting baby's arrival. Could it be the one positive thing we're looking at during all of this? Fewer premature births, what a new study is revealing this morning. We'll talk with Dr. Thompson about it next. Talk about the coronavirus and a surprising impact of this pandemic. About 1 in 10 babies born in the United States are born prematurely. Now, according to the CDC, some babies born early, especially before the 32-week mark, are at a very high risk of a lot of issues: vision or hearing impairment, cerebral palsy, a number of potential medical factors in development. But according to a recent New York Times article, doctors really around the country, and this has been studied in a couple cases in Europe as well, have seen a drop in premature births since the spring. What happened in the spring? You know. So some believe it could be tied to recent lockdowns and stay-at-home orders during the coronavirus pandemic. So what can we take away from this long term? It's very interesting to think about. So to discuss this with us is our friend, Dr. Sharon Thompson of Central Phoenix Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. T, so good to see you, even virtually. Good morning. And with a new hair look today, I am loving it. Yes.
You know, this is a real medical mystery. And in a good way, because premature births is one of the sort of bugaboos of medicine, of obstetrics and gynecology, because it brings real risks to these newborns, and we can't figure it out. So this is sort of a good path that the lockdowns has led us to, because we're seeing in some places a 90% drop in the very earliest of preterm births. We don't know what's causing it, but we're certainly going to be investigating.
And you could deduce that people's lives have definitely slowed down. Many people adjusting, say if they're working full time, maybe they're working from home, and that could put less pressure on a woman who's carrying a baby. I mean, that may be a long commute or stresses with some of that back and forth. So I imagine that that's something in general that you talk about with your patients who are expecting, that the need to really monitor how they're feeling and how they're processing stress.
Yeah, I think that there's so many paths for investigation. We've known for a long time that the sort of end stages of labor have a lot in common with inflammation. And so that makes us think, when most people hear inflammation, they think infection. And so do we as clinicians and researchers. But we have never been able to figure out what is the path that leads from inflammation or infection to birth. And so this is another hint that we're on the right track with that. So what is it about, inflammation, infection, or in this case with the lockdowns, the lack of it, that is keeping women pregnant? So we really have to look at that, and like you alluded to, or is it something more environmental? Is it something that has to do with the sort of, we call it stress, but the burdens on a woman's body when she's pregnant? That's another pathway to look at. What is that combination of factors that the lockdown took away that is keeping these women pregnant, that we're not seeing birth of these very early babies?
And of the very early babies, that's just a whole other, there's so many risks involved for an extremely premature baby or micro-preemie. But we know a lot of times in normal life, there are women who select to schedule delivery for their babies and plan to either induce or plan a C-section. Do you think that any of that hesitation to, rush into the hospital might be a factor in any of this?
That was the first thought, right? Is it just that people are staying out of the hospital, and so you're not seeing those elective inductions or I'm just sort of worried inductions? But that wouldn't affect these very earliest babies, and that's where we're seeing the real dramatic change. So the big change that we're seeing is in the very youngest babies, under 32 weeks. And so those aren't affected by these elective choices or this sort of, I'm just worried, let me go ahead and induce. So this looks real. And so it's hopeful, because it says to us that there's something there that will prevent a woman from having these early babies, that we can maybe figure out and intervene to prevent the ill health, the deaths, the morbidity that we see with prematurity.
Well, let's hope so. Dr. T, always great to see you and get your expert perspective. So good health to you and all your patients. We'll take a quick break.
You as well. Stay well.